At a distant time in the past, there was an exceptionally talented scholar. But he lived his entire life in solitude and became an alcoholic, unable to live without wine. The world at this time was about to face a great disaster. Knowing that the scholar would not live much longer, a man came to him with a wish to turn his spirit into a brush. This way, his soul would be eternally preserved. However, the scholar only cared about his wine jar. As soon as he drank the wine, ideas came to his head, and he rushed to the table to write down a few lines. After the spell was cast, the scholar transformed into a brush pen. When the man tried to put the brush into a bamboo tube, the brush protected itself and flew away. The man gave up, not knowing when he would see that brush again. Fast forward to the present, our main character is Zhang Xia, a university student. He had to attend a boring national language class just because he couldn't find any other class the night before due to the school's slow internet speed. Bored, he was spinning his pen and not listening to the teacher's lecture, so he was called upon to answer a question. He gave a nonsensical answer, causing another student in the class to stand up and answer in his place. This student then pushed Zhang Xia towards the teacher to apologize for not respecting the lecture and giving a wrong answer that insulted literature and poetry. As Zhang Xia was pushed towards the desk, he resisted and knocked over the teacher's coffee cup and brush pen. He managed to catch the cup, but accidentally stepped on and broke the brush. This brush happened to be the teacher's most treasured possession, so the other student accused Zhang Xia of being a destructive vandal. Zhang Xia was then taken away by the teacher and the other student. Originally, Zhang Xia had only chosen this class to improve his transcript, but now things had gone awry. The teacher was boring and always asking questions. To make matters worse, there was Zheng He, a student Zhang Xia despised for his habit of putting others down. Zhang Xia decided to confront this student after class. Zhang Xia was taken to meet the principal. Zheng He played the sycophant in front of the teacher, trying to shirk responsibility and place all the blame on Zhang Xia. The principal was also angry with Zhang Xia because the national language teacher had only become enthusiastic about teaching again after 10 years, only to have Zhang Xia disrupt his class. The teacher scolded Zhang Xia severely, even suggesting that he should no longer study this subject, be removed from the class, and have it noted in his academic record. Zhang Xia had to apologize in hopes of being forgiven. However, the national language teacher informed Zhang Xia that this brush was no ordinary one. It often appeared in antique markets, but wasn't always available. If Zhang Xia could find a similar brush, the teacher would forgive him. The teacher believed in teaching rather than punishing, wanting Zhang Xia to learn many lessons in the process of finding a new brush. At that point, the teacher would have a new brush, and Zhang Xia would have learned his lesson. Zhang Xia could only laugh awkwardly to get through the situation. Afterwards, Zhang Xia had to visit more than a dozen antique markets, but couldn't find any brush similar to the teacher's. He suspected the teacher was deliberately playing a trick on him to make him lose both energy and grades. Suddenly, at one market, there was a stall selling brush pens. He sat down to look, but couldn't find any that resembled the teacher's. Despite the stall owner's persistent sales pitch, Zhang Xia then spotted Zheng He passing by and abandoned his brush shopping to follow him. The stall owner kept trying to sell, forcing Zhang Xia to leave decisively. He then followed Zheng He to a place called Mac Vu Family. Zheng He had gone there to ask an acquaintance to help find a rare brush similar to the teacher's. Zhang Xia realized this disagreeable person was trying to curry favor with the teacher and further put him down. After sitting for a while, Zhang Xia overheard that they had found the location selling a brush similar to the teacher's, so he rushed off while Zheng He was still gloating. When Zhang Xia arrived at the location, the antique market seemed quite deserted and quiet. He called for the shop owner and met a beautiful, charming girl who made him fall in love at first sight. He had to shift the conversation to buying the brush, and the girl brought out a brush for him to see. Zhang Xia found it similar to the teacher's brush and offered to buy it immediately, but the girl refused, wanting to wait for her grandfather to return and set the price. However, a man arrived, wanting to take something from there. The girl adamantly refused and asked him to leave. He grabbed the brush box that Zhang Xia intended to buy and threw it, forcing Zhang Xia to catch it to avoid damage. He was determined not to leave without getting what he wanted, so he threatened to use force, compelling Zhang Xia to step in and mediate. The man paid no attention and used magic to scatter the entire shop. Zhang Xia had to catch the girl while the man went inside to take what he wanted. The girl asked Zhang Xia to hold onto the brush box and cast a snow spell to attack the man. The more he resisted, the more snow covered him. Both of them showed that their powers came from special brush pens. Suddenly, the brush that the man had just taken flew towards Zhang Xia and pierced him. Zhang Xia suddenly gained powers and began to block all attacks from the man. He even blocked attacks for the girl and launched a move that defeated the man. Afterwards, Zhang Xia didn't understand what had just happened and fainted. When he regained consciousness, Zhang Xia found himself on a boat, surrounded by some kind of celestial realm. Suddenly, a whirlwind appeared and blew him back to reality. He found himself unharmed, and suddenly there was a handkerchief on him. The girl from earlier and her grandfather came in and asked if he was feeling better. The old man introduced himself as the shop owner and the girl as his granddaughter, Xiaorong. Zhang Xia wanted the old man to explain what had happened. The old man suggested that Zhang Xia was simply not used to the cold energy from the antiques in his shop and had fainted. But Zhang Xia clearly remembered what had happened to the girl and the man in the suit fighting with magic and the brush piercing him. The old man thought Zhang Xia must be hallucinating and that his dream about the granddaughter must be because he liked her as he was still holding her handkerchief. When asked why he came, Zhang Xia described the brush, but unfortunately, someone named Trin had already bought it earlier. Disappointed, Xiongxia decided to leave, while the old man and Xiaorong felt this was for the best. The old man then gave Xiongxia an even more valuable brush pen as compensation for fainting in his shop. Xiongxia returned to school, still not believing that what he experienced was just a hallucination. However, he couldn't claim it was real because he wasn't injured despite being pierced by the brush. He then remembered that this new brush was more valuable, so he could make up a story about his difficult search for the brush when he meets the teacher, hoping to be forgiven. Later, Zhang Xia encountered Zheng He, and they both went to see the teacher to give him the brushes. Zheng He gave the teacher exactly the brush he wanted, claiming he went to find it himself because he was afraid the teacher would wait too long. As for Zhang Xia, Zheng He suggested that he must have learned something even if he couldn't bring back a brush. But Zhang Xia brought an even better brush. When he presented it to the teacher was very surprised. Recognizing the brush's quality, he took some paper and wrote a few lines. He began to recite some verses, causing Zhang He to ask what made this brush so good. The teacher asked them questions while explaining gradually. Somehow, Zhang Xia could understand some of the poetry. He didn't understand why his knowledge of literature suddenly became so profound. The teacher said that Zhang Xia's brush was very good and had a soul, which he could feel just by writing a few characters. Moreover, Zhang Xia had learned many principles, so the teacher felt that his recent journey was not in vain. In the evening, Zhang Xia went to an internet cafe to play games and accidentally received an advertisement message saying he shouldn't waste his talent. After pondering for a while, he suddenly realized he had been reading ancient characters. Still confused, suddenly a group of thugs arrived with weapons to cause trouble with the internet cafe owner named Yan Qing. Unfortunately for them, Yan Qing knew martial arts. With skillful movements, he could deal with the thugs. Zhang Xia also jumped in to help, surprising Yan Qing with his chivalry. Since Yan Qing had once lent him money for internet time, Zhang Xia felt indebted and wanted to form a brotherhood with him. After fighting for a while, they were overwhelmed. Just as Zhang Xia was in a difficult situation, a surge of power emanated from him, causing him to teleport into the air. He was scared because he didn't know what was happening. Unable to hit Zhang Xia, the thugs turned their attention to Yan Qing. Zhang Xia immediately appeared in front of the people and launched a series of punches into the face of each one. Seeing that they couldn't fight back, they tucked their tails and ran away. Yan Qing was also surprised that his little brother was hiding his skills so well. He expressed his desire to arrange a duel when there's a chance, but Zhang Xia said he was a bit tired and needed to rest for now. This time, Zhang Xia could be certain that he wasn't delusional. The sudden ability to read ancient characters and the surge in fighting power made him feel excited. He never thought such fantastical things could happen in real life. He wanted to think of a name for himself, but was too tired, so he decided to sleep on it and think more later. Suddenly, Zhang Xia found himself waking up in an unfamiliar place, with an old man reciting poetry beside him. Just as the old man approached, he jolted awake. He turned off the machine and went home to be safe. He thought he would have to return to that antique shop to find answers. Suddenly, Zhang Xia heard someone calling his name. Turning around, he discovered a strange monster behind him. He ran away in fear, but it caught up and pinned him to the ground. Zhang Xia tried to awaken his inner strength but failed, just as he thought this would be the end of his life. The monster suddenly began to be covered in ice and snow. Relieved to still be alive, he realized that his lifesaver was none other than Xiaorong. She asked him about the pen and became angry when she learned he had given it away. Xiaorong vented all her anger on the monster and finished it off, making Zhang Xia like her even more. They both returned to the antique shop, and by this time, he had also been educated about people's ability to create puppet pens. Grandfather explained that the demon they just encountered was a puppet created from a magic pen, and the pen he had given Zhang Xia earlier was the nemesis of this pen. His purpose in giving it to Zhang Xia was to protect his life, yet he carelessly gave it away to an outsider. If his granddaughter Xiaorong hadn't appeared in time, he might have been dead. Zhang Xia quickly rebutted, saying that they had deceived him first. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have been foolish enough to give it away. But the old man said he did it to protect him, and since he was just an ordinary person, he advised Zhang Xia to forget everything and let things return to their normal course. Hearing this, Zhang Xia felt offended. It was clear that the old man's granddaughter couldn't win the fight earlier and had to rely on him to save her life. He believed that if he had gained this power, he should take on the corresponding responsibility. But the old man still advised him not to make hasty decisions and to listen to his explanation before deciding, as it wasn't too late. The story began with the owner of the mysterious pen collection. He was originally a minor scribe in ancient times. At that time, the world was in chaos, with wars breaking out everywhere. Seeing the cruel trampling of scholars from various schools and cultures, he was heartbroken. To avoid wasting talent in the world, this person came up with a way to suspend souls and refine pens, turning the souls of talented people into spirit pens to preserve their talents. Zhang Xia's spirit pen was named Lai Bai, also known as the King of Poetry. Hearing this, he became extremely excited, as it clearly meant he was a master among the heroes of spirit pens. The only problem was that the Lai Bai pen inside Zhang Xia wasn't complete, but only a small part. Suddenly, the old man sprang up and attacked someone hiding behind Zhang Xia. This person was Mr. Li, and his purpose for coming here was to settle scores with the person who had seriously injured the man in the suit earlier. Xiaorong confirmed that this was the person who had tried to assassinate Zhang Xia. Xiaorong wanted to rush in to support her grandfather, but this only put her in more danger. Zhang Xia stood up to block the attack for her. But grandfather had timely prevented the old man's vicious move. Mr. Li claimed that the pen inside Zhang Xia should belong to his huge family and was also the owner of the pen collection that once refined 7 precious spirit pens. However, to get the pen, Zhang Xia would have to lose his life. At this point, grandfather was gradually falling into a disadvantageous position. Xiaorong urged Zhang Xia to run away so she and her grandfather could buy more time. Just as Mr. Li was about to defeat grandfather, Zhang Xia's power surged again, knocking Mr. Li far away. Grandfather advised him not to interfere as he was no match for Mr. Li. But how could Zhang Xia remain indifferent when things had come to this? Unexpectedly, he was caught off guard by Mr. Li's dirty trick and was lifted into the air by his neck. Just as Mr. Li was about to deliver the final blow, grandfather sacrificed himself to shield him, while also inflicting enough damage to make Mr. Li retreat. However, that was only his avatar. Many dangers still lay ahead. So grandfather promised to find a way to separate the spirit pen from Zhang Xia and return him to his peaceful life. But during that time, he must learn to control the spirit pen for self-protection in the future. Zhang Xia agreed to learn to control the spirit pen, not just to protect himself, but also to protect the two benefactors who saved his life. To allow grandfather to recover peacefully, Xiaorong volunteered to pass on her experience to Zhang Xia. The young man grinned happily when he heard that the girl was taking the initiative to care for him. The next day, Zhang Xia returned to school, surprising everyone as he now had a beautiful girl accompanying him. Xiaorong took him to the library and asked him to learn all of Lai Bai's poems. Seeing Xiaorong's serious face, Zhang Xia tried to make a few jokes to make her smile, but being unattractive and lacking wit, he came across as quite awkward. Zhang He appeared out of nowhere and began reciting poetry to mock Zhang Xia. His sarcastic manner annoyed Zhang Xia greatly, but he couldn't think of any retorts. Zhang He suggested that Xiaorong was with him out of pity and advised her to stay away from Zhang Xia. Seeing Zhang Xia being insulted in front of others, Xiaorong couldn't hold back anymore and began scolding Zhang He, calling him an empty barrel that makes the most noise and suggesting he should retake ethics classes to improve his character. Zhang Xia was overjoyed like a puppy to see Xiaorong standing up for him once again. Xiaorong took his hand and led him away, leaving Zhang He in shock from being humiliated by a beautiful girl. On their side, Zhang Xia was still in a daze, looking at the hand that had just touched Xiaorong's. As for learning poetry, although he could now convert ancient poems into images, he still didn't quite understand their meaning. Because spirit pens were refined from the souls of different scholars, their intellects also differed. Normally, they would actively seek people with compatible personalities, and only in the worst case would they randomly choose someone as dim-witted as him, which was why it couldn't fully unleash its inherent abilities. Unbeknownst to them, their conversation had been overheard by Zhang He, who thought to himself that with his talent, if he had one of these, his name would surely be renowned everywhere. After trying to immerse himself in the poet's soul for a while, Zhang Xia was about to fall asleep. But Xiaorong suggested that the best way to connect with Lai Bai's pen was through his own poetry. However, one was talented, while the other was as clever as a brick, so how could he possibly understand? She suggested he start with simpler verses, but he wanted to rest. She didn't force him, only saying that when the Zhuge family's people came for him, it wouldn't matter whether he wanted to rest or rest permanently underground. He wanted to ask for more help, but the Li family was very powerful, so no one wanted to get involved. Zhang Xia felt his current situation was no different from a game, except that he had encountered the final boss right after entering the newbie village. She explained that the abilities of each spirit pen were related to the talent hidden within, so to succeed, one must use the abilities to guess the background and characteristics of a pen. But no matter what was said, Zhang Xia just wanted to sleep now. Seeing Zhang Xia's listless appearance, Xiaorong slapped him and crammed more knowledge into his head. Zhang Xia, not wanting to be outdone, revealed that he also knew a little about the lady's spirit pen, but these things were because he wanted to understand more about Xiaorong, so he had previously asked the teacher for explanations. His efforts were rewarded with a smile from her. Poetry flowed continuously, but a book by Xiaorong helped him snap out of his trance. She then praised the owner of the grave pen and even compared him unfavorably to that person, causing Zhang Xia to feel offended and ask her what that great person had done to contribute to society, or if it was all just for a personal desire to keep the spirit pen for themselves. He thought that maybe what he said was the reason Lai Bai's pen flew away. Just as he finished speaking, a powerful energy stream appeared, and a deer flew out of him, making him overjoyed because he could finally connect with Lai Bai's legacy pen. However, this only proved that he needed to study even more. Elsewhere, Zhang He had called his uncle and asked him to contact a woman with the surname Qin, as she seemed very knowledgeable in the field he needed help with. In the evening, the entire dormitory once again felt extremely jealous when Zhang Xia brought a girl back. She wanted to ask for his room number to keep an eye on him, but the murderous aura around was too intense, forcing him to take her to an internet cafe. Xiangxia didn't forget to tell Yanqing that she is his crush, so Yanqing arranged for the couple to sit together. Ziola saw that she only knew how to browse the web, which looked a bit boring. But because Xiaorong had only known about training since she was young, she wasn't good at these things. As a playboy, he decided to teach her how to play games, and so they played LOL together. However, after one match, he began to suspect whether she was being modest about her skills or not. Xiaorong thought this game was even easier than controlling the spirit pen, and because she had learned how to play from him, she demanded that he also seriously learn what she taught. After learning that reading more poetry would help him transform more, Zhongxia dove into reading intensively and finally fell asleep as usual. In his dream, he met that weird old man again, and when he opened his eyes, he saw that Xiaorong had also fallen asleep at some point. Yanqing thought that someone like Xiaorong wasn't suitable for coming to game cafes and advised Zhangxia to come up with more dating ideas. Xiaola thanked his understanding brother and then walked over to stare intently at Xiaorong's sleeping figure. He thought about needing to complete the spirit pen control course soon to be able to protect himself. He didn't want Xiaorong to have to work hard following him forever. So he contacted the teacher and asked to borrow the pen from before. But unexpectedly, Zheng He had gone ahead of him and already borrowed it. Hearing the name Zheng, he became furious and decided to go out and settle the score with him. At the same time, he asked Yanqing to help him watch over Xiaorong. Yanqing was stunned, not knowing how people in the outside world dated that they would leave someone's daughter at an internet cafe in the middle of the night. Zhang Xia went to the house of Zhang, his uncle near the antique market. But because it was dark and he couldn't see anything, he accidentally tripped over the uncle, who was lying unconscious nearby. He thought the person was dead, but fortunately, he was still breathing. Just as he was about to call for emergency help, the uncle suddenly woke up and whispered for help. Suddenly, Zhang Xia's chest felt a sharp pain. It was the spirit pen trying to warn him about something. Zhang Xia decided to turn off his phone and go investigate the situation. He discovered a strange woman who was in the act of harming Zhang He. She thought Zhang He should be happy because he was about to become her puppet. Zhang Xia, from outside, thought he still had time to save Zhang He. Although this guy was always annoying, as the main character, he couldn't see death and not save him. He realized he needed Xiaorong's help, but feared she wouldn't be able to arrive in time. Rushing in now would be like surrendering his life to her, not knowing what to do. The young man suddenly had an idea. He then boldly stood in front of the door and called her out. He showed anger when seeing her dare to touch someone from the Zhuge family. When she still didn't believe, he secretly used the magic of the spirit pen to affirm to her that he weren't free to joke around. Zhangxia threatened that Mr. Li was very angry, and the consequences she caused would be unpredictable. But she played innocent, saying that Zheng He actively brought the pen to find her, and because she thought he was an outsider who knew nothing, she dared to touch Zheng He. Seeing her fall into the trap, Zhang Xia smiled triumphantly. She showed fear, bowing and begging for mercy, willing to be a servant for the Zhuge family for life. He thought indeed no one dared to offend the Zhuge family. Zhang Xia demanded she hand over Zhang Yi and cooperate happily. Then in the future, he could say nice things about her in front of Mr. Li. However, those very words exposed you. He tried to run away, but couldn't escape the chain she summoned. He couldn't escape because the chains absorb your energy. She pointed out that Mr. Li wasn't the boss and she would have to punish Yi for lying. Zhang Xia now realized he had underestimated this woman. Her chains had the ability to connect with the five senses and control human nerves, so she continuously made Zhang Xia experience sensations from aching to numbness. After torturing him for a while, she began to get bored and decided to end his miserable life. She wrapped the last chain around Zhang Xia's neck and strangled him. Just as Zhang Xia was about to lose consciousness, he remembered the death poem of the scholar he met in his dream. He began to recite this poem and suddenly created a shockwave that blew her away. He then read another poem to her. A purple smoke spread out and rushed towards her chains. She tried to counterattack, but it was almost hopeless. He finally created a giant wave to submerge her, but she had disappeared, leaving behind the pen box that Zheng He had brought. Zheng He was also freed. Back at the internet cafe, Xiaorong demanded Yan Qing reveal Zhang Xia's location. But the brother truly didn't know where this younger brother was. Just as they mentioned him, he returned with Zhang He. Busy taking Zhang He back to recuperate, he didn't realize he had dropped the pen box he had just picked up. Zhang He now looked no different from a living corpse. After hearing Zhang Xia recount the events, Xiaorong checked and found that only Zhang He's brain was fortunately not too heavily altered in his body. She could only slow down the rate of transformation, but was helpless beyond that. At this moment, Zheng He's father burst in and ordered his subordinates to take Zheng He to the hospital. He thanked Zhang Xia for saving his son and then gave him some money before leaving. Xiaorong was very proud of Zhang Xia for being able to resonate with the spirit pen. However, she also warned him about carefully considering when choosing poems to use to avoid leading to unstable breathing. He suddenly remembered the thing that woman had dropped and went to look for it. But Yan Qing had accidentally found and opened it, causing the spirit pen to enter him. After Yan Qing woke up, he immediately asked Zhang Xia if he was from the Justice League or a superhero. He thought they must belong to some mysterious organization, and each person had mysterious powers. Zhang Xia thought he only needed to know they were on the good side. They then came up with a plan to protect Zheng He because he might be being hunted. Xiaorong wanted to explain, but he thought saving people was more important now. They then went to the hospital to visit Zheng He. Yan Qing had been briefly explained about the spirit pen by Xiaorong. Yan Qing suddenly felt the blood of those around him begin to stimulate him. His fingers began to glow, making him unsure if this was normal or not. They still weren't sure what powers the pen had, so for now, they limited its use. Suddenly, a cloud enveloped the hospital. Xiaorong immediately recognized this as the 5-color pen capable of causing hallucinations. Before she could warn them, the other two were already affected by the spell. Xiaorong tried to call for both of them to close their eyes, but she was then captured and went through the scariest illusions of her life. Luckily, Zhang Xia managed to escape and help Xiaorong wake up. Xiaorong uses a shield to block all the strange lights. Xiaorong explains the meaning of each color. The shield is broken, so she continuously creates ice to hold on. Yan Qing tries to use his inner power to release his ability, but it has no effect. Zhang Xia gets hit again and experiences hallucinations, becoming agitated due to fear. Yan Qing has to trip Zhang Xia, making him fall face first to get him out of the hallucination. Xiaorong knows the enemy is from the Zhuge family and is likely targeting Zhang Xia. She reinforces the ice wall, but the enemy summons a group of ghosts and breaks through the wall. Zhang Xia asks Yan Qing to recite a poem by Lai Bai to help him remember, but his brother can't remember those things at all. He sees Xiaorong being hit by red light, so he runs to protect her and help her escape the hallucination, but accidentally creates an opening for a ghost to make a hole. Zhang Xia is thrown into Yan Qing by the ghost. Yan Qing's glowing hand accidentally touches him, instantly healing the hole in Zhang Xia's body. In the panic, he also unintentionally heals all of Xiaorong's wounds, but each time he uses the power, one finger stops glowing. Knowing his ability is healing, Yan Qing becomes much more confident. He charges straight into the mist, takes hits, and heals himself to find the person behind this smoke screen. After one punch, the enemy surrenders, but Yan Qing has no intention of letting him off so easily. The fat guy takes the opportunity to strike again, but Yan Qing just blows it away gently. Zhang Xia demands the fat guy to surrender obediently, but he takes the chance to grab Yan Qing's hand. Unexpectedly, Yan Qing's ability can also secrete poison, causing the fat guy to be counterattacked. He then runs away, and all three don't bother to chase him. Zhang Xia feels proud for just having played the hero saving the beauty, but Xiaorong warns him to leave her alone next time. Returning to the clinic, Zhang Xia realizes his Chinese teacher is also there. He feels guilty for unintentionally letting Zheng He end up in this state. The teacher now reveals that the pen was created by the Zhuge family, and tells him about the pen's past. He then leaves, so Zhang Xia asks Yan Qing to watch over Zheng He while he sees the teacher off. Yan Qing intends to use his power to heal Zheng He, but his strength is still limited. Zhang Xia then goes to find Xiaorong but accidentally overhears her talking to someone and reporting that Zhang Xia has taken the bait and is indeed easy to deceive. Zhang Xia immediately confronts her, but she calmly states that there's no reason she would choose to stay with an idiot like him without a purpose. Xiaorong's grandfather had planned to use Zhang Xia from the beginning to gain his trust and then use him as bait. After that incident, Zhang Xia is very angry with Xiaorong's family. He silently blames himself for being too gullible and believing in women's tongues. Suddenly, the woman from before comes to him. She is misskinned, and he thinks she's here to find Zheng He, but she also wants to find him to get back the pen she dropped. However, he tells her to go ask Mr. Li for it. She knows that Zhang Xia is related to Xiaorong's family, but he no longer wants to have anything to do with those two grandfather and granddaughter. Miss Qin is happy to know he's alone and proposes to cooperate with him to find the 7 spiritual pens. But she is cruel enough to twist the knife in the wound of Zhang Xia's recent betrayal to mock him. She then negotiates to heal Zheng He if Zhang Xia agrees to work for her. He doesn't know what she's plotting, but she thinks he can't just watch someone die without helping. Zhang Xia is tired of trusting women, so he agrees to help if she heals Zheng He first. So Miss Qin takes Zhang Xia to get the tool to save Zheng He's life. Zhang Xia plans to let her treat Zheng He, and then decide whether to help her or not as he wishes. She takes him to the car and starts rummaging through her things. She then takes out an inkstone and tells him to hold it. And immediately, she takes out an electric baton and shocks him, making him fall down. Realizing he's been tricked, it's already too late. As he's being kidnapped by her, Xiaorong comes to the hospital at this time. Yanqing is still in the hospital and wonders where the others have gone for so long. Unexpectedly, he meets Xiaorong again. Zhang Xia wakes up tied up and his spirit pen is also sealed. He tries to use his phone to call Yanqing, but Miss Qin quickly arrives and drags him out of the trunk. She throws him to the ground and reveals that she has brought him to a temple to conveniently take his life. Miss Qin wants to seize his spirit pen, but suddenly her attacks are blocked by a mysterious bead. A monk appears and reveals that they know Miss Qin is causing trouble. So he ordered the Dharma monk to come along and deal with Miss Qin. This young man's martial arts skills are at an extremely high level, making it difficult for Miss Qin to compare. During the fight, Miss Qin unties Zhang Xia and promises not to harm him if he agrees to help her. But he's tired of being tricked, so he decides to cheer for the Dharma monk. However, before finishing her off, this young man stops and lets Miss Qin stand up to fight back, but the monk wants him not to be lenient with people like Miss Qin. He continues to attack, but she uses Zhang Xia as a shield and casts a spell on his hand before escaping. The monk uses one of his beads to break the spell for the young man. The monk then introduces himself as Peter and the young man as Zhu. Through the sealing talisman on Zhang Xia, he knows that he holds Lai Bai's pen. Zhang Xia prepares to confront them, but Peter explains that they have no intention of harming him. Of course, he doesn't want to believe it. However, the monk immediately neutralizes his power by interrupting his poem recitation. He really just wants to learn more about Zhang Xia's abilities and discuss some matters with him, specifically about how his pen will soon become part of opening the Song Dynasty pen tomb. The monk reveals that Xiaorong's family is facing inheritance issues. For a long time, her family has betrayed each other and caused many fights. Xiaorong's grandfather was the one who started it, but then disappeared. Suddenly someone appears, so Zhu has to go deal with it, and it turns out to be brother Yanqing. Thanks to Zhang Xia's phone call earlier, his brother heard everything and rushed here. Peter then tells Yanqing about the history of the pen he's holding. Suddenly, they notice someone else coming, so Peter uses magic to help the group hide. The one who comes is the man who attacked Xiaorong's shop before. He brings someone here to take advantage of the yin energy of this place to easily kill and steal the pen. But just as he's about to act, Zhang Xia's group appears to stop him. He's surprised to meet again the one who ruined his plans before, right here. He's glad he can take 2 of the 7 top spirit pens at once. Zhang Xia tries to use magic to deal with him, but it doesn't work, so Zhu has to rush out to fight instead. Peter knows his level isn't high enough, and he's distracted, so it's hard to use magic. The other guy uses magic to fight Zhu, forcing Peter to step in and block the attack for him. Zhang Xia is also surprised to learn that both of them don't have spirit pens, but are at such a high level. So Zhu keeps attacking, and when the enemy uses magic, he retreats behind Peter's barrier. The other guy is a bit annoyed by this tactic, so he uses an extremely powerful move to break the barrier and push Peter back. Yan Qing still can't use healing, so Peter has to take out all his beads to create a shield. Although reinforced, the Zhuge family member still breaks through and doesn't let anyone escape. Zhu has to rush out to block the attack and falls. Zhang Xia is caught. So Yan Qing rushes forward, but is still ticked aside by the other guy. He then puts Zhang Xia in a corner and approaches with a knife. The person he brought tries to beg for help, but is stabbed first, then Zhang Xia is next. At this moment, Yan Qing sees that one finger has recovered. He intends to use it to deal with the Zhuge family member, but chooses to save the person first. The Zhuge family member quickly takes the pen from the other person's corpse. Yan Qing tries to rush over and push him away to heal Zhang Xia, but Zhang Xia is thrown aside, and Yan Qing's head is grabbed. Yan Qing stabs his finger into him, but hits the pen container, causing the pen to fly out. Zhang Xia realizes Yan Qing's ability is to reverse time, not healing or poisoning. The man then pulls Zhang Xia close and prepares to attack him, but Zhang Xia resists, causing the attack to hit the pen. The pen surprisingly flies towards Zhang Xia and enters him. He now has a new ability and releases a dragon aimed at the attacker. The man manages to escape, and Zhang Xia's group luckily survives this time. Actually, Zhang Xia was using Lai Bai's pen to trick him, as he doesn't know how to use the new pen yet. He's surprised that someone would dare to kill for a pen and disregard the law to such an extent. Peter sees that indeed Zhang Xia's two pens have merged. But the problem is that Zhang Xia doesn't like this because one person after another is targeting him. Peter thinks he should be happy because no one has ever absorbed two spirit pens at once. The last person who did this died suddenly. Suddenly, Yan Qing remembers that Xia Rong asked him to give something to Zhang Xia. It clearly states how to return the pen without causing death. Unable to understand it, Peter borrows it to take a look and says it's related to the pen tomb. They might need to follow him to meet the legitimate chief of the Wei family, which used to be Xiaorong's grandfather's family, to understand these words. Zhang Xia doesn't want to meet Xiaorong for fear of being tricked again, so he decides to follow Peter. They then split up. Since there are two pen tombs, Yan Qing and Zhu will go to find information about one place, while Peter and Juanxia will meet the Wei family chief to ask about the words on the paper. They later arrive at a famous landmark. Peter reveals that this place was established by the Wei family. They meet an acquaintance of Peter, who leads them to meet the clan chief. When they meet, Juanxia is shocked to learn that Peter is the son of the Wei family chief. After examining Juanxia's situation, the chief is surprised that he's a rare case of keeping two pens in one body. He decides to keep Zhang Xia to develop his potential, but Zhang Xia refuses. Peter thinks Zhang Xia just wants to return the pen safely. However, the chief ties them both up, considering Zhang Xia a rare case. He doesn't want to let Zhang Xia fall into anyone else's hands, but wants to keep him to develop for the Wei family. The uncle who led Peter here earlier thinks that instead of caring about these spirit pens, it would be better to throw them all away and focus on making money. Because of these spirit pens, one of the chief's sons became a monk, and the other's fate is unknown. But the chief stubbornly wants to follow the ancestral instructions. The uncle still thinks that Zhang Xia is now a target for many factions, so it's better to let him leave to avoid affecting the Wei family. The chief then returns to release both of them, saying they should solve their own problems. He wants to apologize by showing Xiongxia how to use the new pen. This pen has the ability to predict the future. If Xiongxia gets lost, he should use it. Xiongxia tries it and sees it drop a feather. This pen consumes the owner's life force when used, so he should avoid overusing it. He then realizes the pen rewrites the poem Xiaorong gave him. The pen shows him the direction, but he must decide what to do himself. Zhang Xia feels it's a waste of lifespan without getting anything useful. But Peter thinks that since the pen wrote it this way, Zhang Xia's choice to return the pen is correct. but he still doesn't know how to do it. Suddenly, the clan chief has a seizure and passes away. Peter realizes the pen in his father's body has disappeared, and he has truly passed away. Suddenly, a servant sees this and misunderstands that they killed the chief, so she runs away screaming. Peter realizes they've been set up. When others arrive, they can't find Peter and Jongxia anywhere, so they lock down the entire area. Jongxia and Peter have now arrived at the ancestral hall. Peter comes here both to look at the ancestral altar one last time and to lead Jongxia to a secret passage. Peter opened a secret passage leading to a tunnel beneath the mansion. He led Jongxia to the spirit pen storage, where all the ownerless spirit pens found by the Y family were kept. This place was only accessible with the clan leader's permission. They planned to hide there temporarily to find a way to escape. Miss Qin had once sneaked in here to steal a pen and escaped without anyone knowing, so he suspected there might be an unknown exit. Zhangxia found a switch and helped both of them enter. Inside, there were many characters, and suddenly Zhangxia's light shone on 2 pens, causing 2 ghosts to rush out. These 2 pens reacted to light, so they must be anti-theft sensors. Peter knew these beings were sensitive to sound, so Zhangxia created a loud bell sound to neutralize them and attacked to turn them back into pens. He pulled out the pen tip and asked Peter what he thought of his move. Peter suddenly realized something from his words and began rearranging the characters, discovering that there was another way out. He then tried pushing a stone table and found a passageway underneath. They reached the pen storage, and Jongxia thought Peter should take one. But he wondered why Peter would want one if he wanted to quit. They then discovered sword marks, indicating there had been a battle here. It seemed she had tried to escape and used a sword to find a way out. The sword marks were concentrated on this wall, so Zhangxia used magic to break it, revealing an escape route. They both used this path to escape. Zhangxia would go to regroup with Yan Qing's team, while Peter would investigate his father's death. They parted ways here. Zhangxia later met up with Yan Qing's group and stayed overnight. Zhangxia tried using his prophecy ability to find a way to return the pen, but no characters appeared. When he thought about Xiaorong, Yan Qing suggested he shouldn't think too much about women, as he and Zhu were there to help him. They decided to hide from Zhu what had happened with Peter. Meanwhile, some strangers targeted Zhangxia as soon as they saw him holding the prophecy pen. The next morning, Zhangxia's group arrived at a temple with a tomb called the Pen Tomb. When they got there, Zhangxia suddenly had a headache and saw the image of a demon. Suddenly, someone appeared and attacked, luring Zhu away. A girl appeared targeting Zhangxia, and a third person showed up claiming they were looking for someone with the surname Zhang. But Yan Qing said Zhangxia's surname was Law, and suddenly he was trapped in a barrier and turned into a spirit pen. This person had tricked Yan Qing into revealing Zhangxia's surname to trap him. To get out, he had to win a poetry contest against this person. Meanwhile, Juanxia was constantly being attacked with flying daggers outside. The girl could find him wherever he hid, and her power could even break stones. He created a sword and charged, but it broke when blocking an attack. He created armor, but it only withstood 2 flying daggers before breaking. So he created fog to obscure vision, but she used spirit pen magic to locate him and charged. He tried to counterattack, but she kicked him back. He used magic to summon a dragon to fly away, but she launched a spear that cut the dragon in half, causing him to fall. He noticed her pen had the ability to enlarge objects. Meanwhile, Yan Qing used his rap skills to counter the other person, stumping him in his own barrier. Zhangxia tried to create a sword to fight back when suddenly she struck the pen tomb, releasing the demon Zhangxia had seen when they first arrived. The demon immediately attacked and targeted the girl. The prophecy pen suddenly broke free and instinctively pulled Zhangxia to save the dagger-throwing girl. She didn't show gratitude but slapped him, leaving him confused about why good deeds were punished. But suddenly, she looked at the prophecy pen with tears in her eyes. The bespectacled man came to pull the girl away to run, while Zhangxia and Yan Qing also wanted to run to find Zhu. The group tried to run outside, but was chased by demon heads, and after a round, they returned to where the demon was. Realizing they couldn't escape because the demon heads would chase them back here, The group had to hide in a corner to think of a plan. The bespectacled brother decided to cooperate with Zhang Xia and transfer power from his pen to Zhang Xia's prophecy pen. The girl had shown Yanqing how to also transfer power, and until now, they still didn't know that this pen had abilities other than prophecy. Suddenly, the demon began to absorb all the resentment energy around and transformed into a monk ghost. The bespectacled man recognized this monk. Long ago, this monk had been entrusted with a book written by a Zen master. Emperor Taizong had repeatedly demanded the book from the monk, but he had hidden it and lied that it had been destroyed in the war. Not long after, a scholar came to the temple, and the scholar and the monk quickly became like-minded friends. He trusted the scholar and took out the book, only to have it stolen by the scholar, who had been sent by Emperor Taizong. The monk harbored resentment and became a ghost. But even knowing this now, they still couldn't hold out much longer. Suddenly, Yanqing noticed that the prophecy pen kept pointing straight at the pen tomb, so they came up with the idea of destroying the pen tomb to see if it would change anything. And the only person who could do that now was the dagger-throwing girl. The group then had to rush out to block everything to reach the pen tomb. Yanqing would follow behind and restore them as much as possible. Yanqing and the girl then advanced, with Yanqing constantly using restoration. When only one last use remained, he decided to use it on the girl to help her have enough strength to break the pen tomb. But the Yin energy was still there because the monk's urn hadn't been destroyed. She had to apologize for the offense and threw a dagger at it, causing the Yin energy to burst out. The monk's resentful spirit was still there, but many pillars of light began to shine and then flew down to a nearby lake. A spirit pen flew up from below, and Lai Bai's pen suddenly broke free and flew up, attracting to the pen above. The pen wrote a poem and began to enlighten the monk. He was able to let go of his resentment and transcend. Just then, Zairong's grandfather arrived to take the new pen. Zairong had come and told Zhanxia that her grandfather had intentionally set him up to come here because only his Libby pen could attract the other pen. He realized he had been tricked again, and the old man said he should keep Libby's pen well to accomplish great things in the future. When Zairong came to help Zhanxia, she was just sent away. He said he would never believe anything from her or her grandfather again. Xiaorong had no choice but to leave, and the man in the suit from the Zhuge family, Chongqing, also came running. He had been frozen outside by Xiaorong's grandfather and now intended to deal with Yanqing and Zhang Xia to get the pen. But they no longer had tubes to hold the pens, so they might as well take both back to the Zhuge family. Upon returning, the girl and Chongqing were frustrated that the clan leader still hadn't allowed them to kill Zhang Xia and Yanqing to get the pen. Chongqing didn't want to let Zhang Xia and Yanqing live for fear of revealing the secret that he had tried to kill someone to get the pen at the temple earlier. So he plotted to kill them to silence them. But when he arrived, he found that the girl who used flying daggers, Sergio, had already killed both of them. What Sergio had just done was to avenge her teacher, who had been killed by Chongqing before. After a conversation, Sergio noticed something strange in Chongqing's words, from which he revealed that he was indeed the one who had killed Sergio's teacher. Zhang Xia and Yanqing also stood up because the scene just now was staged by him to make Chongqing confess his crime. Earlier, when tied up, Zhang Xia had revealed the truth about Chongqing, but no one believed him, so he had to take out the prophecy pen to point it out. The pen said he had to die, so this plan was devised. When interrogated, Chongqing was forced by the butler to pull out his pen, which would cause him mental damage and make him reveal information. But he still stubbornly refused to confess. And then suddenly his eyes turned red, and he died. Yanqing tried to use his power to save him but failed. The butler realized that someone had placed a seal to prevent this person from revealing the mastermind behind it. And the seal was so strong that even Yanqing's power was helpless. When they returned, Sergio apologized to him for the misunderstanding and also thanked him for saving her back at the pen tomb. The butler then wanted to take Zhongxia to meet the clan leader of the Zhuge family. When he arrived, he was surprised that this person was quite young, which explained why his previous lie in front of Miss Qin was exposed. He invited Zhongxia to sit down and talk. Xianxia went straight to the point, saying he wanted to return the pen, but the clan leader didn't know exactly how, so he could only tell Xianxia to go to the remaining pen tomb and try his luck. However, he warned Xianxia to be careful of a faction called the Chuantuan Pen, but these were actually corrupted grave pen users who used a method of training pens with living people. This method failed and caused the people used for pen training to become ghosts and serve those who trained them. The Wei family and Zhuge family had once cooperated to fight against these people, but couldn't eliminate them all, and he suspected that Zhairong's grandfather's disruption of the Wei family was related to this Chuantuan Pen. No one knew if they had any more sinister plots. Meanwhile, Mr. Wei saw that Zhairong was still angry with him. He revealed that he didn't have much longer to live, and he promised that in the future, he wouldn't create any plots to harm Zhangxia. He also said that if he were to pass away, she should still live well. In the following days, Zhangxia and Yanqing were invited to stay at the Zhuge family as guests. During the day, Shiji took them sightseeing, played golf with them, and they even ate at the same table as the clan leader. However, although they were living comfortably, they both felt uneasy, as if they were under house arrest. When they wanted to return to the internet cafe, they were prevented from doing so. Suddenly that night, Peter messaged that he had a lead on returning the pen and arranged to meet Xianxia, instructing him to leave the Zhuge family soon. Shiju overheard this and decided to help him because some other traders were also heading to the place where Peter was meeting Xianxia. She wanted to go there to deal with them, so she decided to help both of them escape. She led them to a back door that was less guarded, but there was a chef station there. He let all three leave, but immediately they all returned inside. They tried again but were continuously teleported, so they realized the old chef was playing tricks. Yanqing rushed to punch him, but hit the wall instead. They realized that every time the chef stomped his foot, he could teleport people within range to a 180-degree angle, so the three of them decided to split into 3 directions. The chef stomped his foot and moved them to a 90-degree position. But just as he realized one person was missing, Yanqing hit him on the back of the head because he had stood still and wasn't teleported. They then took a train to the location and caught a taxi to the meeting point. Suddenly, the hospital called to report that Peter was in emergency care, and the taxi driver had an upcoming order at the meeting point they had set earlier, so Shiji and Yanqing decided to go to the meeting point to scout, while Zhangxia went to the hospital to check on Peter's condition. He later met Peter in the hospital. As soon as he regained consciousness, Peter revealed his investigation process and learned that his uncle was the one who had plotted to kill his father to take control of the clan. After further investigation, he discovered that the Zhuge family was also involved in this and was collaborating with a third party. However, Zhangxia knew that the Zhuge family members Peter mentioned were traitors, and when Peter went to the meeting point to investigate, he was unfortunately ambushed and seriously injured. The people who ambushed him had great strength, so Zhangxia was worried about Shiji and Yanqing. On the other side, they had now seen that all the people sent by the Zhuge family to deal with the traitors had been killed there. Shiji was determined to avenge her fellow clan members, so she and Yanqing went in deeper. Zhangxia had called Yanqing to warn him, but he was too busy running to notice his phone, making Zhangxia worry that they were about to go in too deep. The two of them were now hiding in a corner and saw the butler and the bespectacled man encounter 2 traitors from the Zhuge family. The one who used the 5-color pen before and another person related to all the traitors of the Zhuge family. These 2 wanted the butler to join them, but he firmly refused. Zhangxia had asked Peter about the dangerous power that the traitors had, and he said it was a monster. Yanqing now realized that this monster was Zheng He. The 5-color pen user became afraid when the butler started to make moves to attack. He let Zheng He charge forward to attack, but the butler threw him into a corner. After that, the butler used his power to lock Zheng He in place and threw him into the sky before slamming him down. While fighting, he also tried to see who was controlling Zheng He. He found the thread leading to the 5-color pen user, so he rushed towards him, but the man made Zheng He return to block the attack. Shiji wanted to go out, but Yanqing stopped her and advised her to have a clear plan before going out. The 5-color pen user deliberately exposed a weakness to lure the butler Indiana. At this point, he pumped more magic into Zheng He, causing him to mutate further. The butler still managed to push Zheng He back with one move, but the accompanying man used his ability to turn into a ghost and attack the butler. Shijiao and Yanqing were now forced to reveal themselves to deal with the situation. However, before they could reach the butler, the five-color pen user had already taken him hostage to threaten both of them to stop. Shijiao used her pen's power to create a deafening sound, and Yanqing took the opportunity to jab the five-color pen user, making him cough blood, and tried to heal the butler. But he was pushed away by Zhang He and targeted, while Shijiao had to deal with the ghost pen user. Shi and Yanqing were soon overwhelmed. Although Yanqing had healing abilities, it was only enough to run away. However, he managed to heal the butler and Shijiao, and at the same time, Zhang Xia had also arrived. He recognized the ghost pen user as Mr. Li. The person Mr. Y had deceived him about was the former clan leader of the Zhuge family. He knew that Mr. Y must be somewhere around here. He was also angry that they had involved an ordinary person like Zhang He in this matter. Just as he was about to fight, Mr. Li used magic to make the three people with him unconscious. He revealed that he had cast a spell causing the three to gradually lose their life force. Now, unless Zhang Xia handed over the two pens, these three would die. Zhang Xia didn't know how to return the pens, so Mr. Li showed him the way, saying that this place used to be a pen-returning tomb, but it was destroyed in the war. However, the person who created this pen-returning tomb had once drawn 4 dragons to guard this place. These 4 dragons were the 4 blue stone pillars behind that palace. He had to go and draw eyes for them to reopen the pen tomb. Xiongxia wasn't sure if he would spare the other 3 after getting the pens, but he had no other choice now. As he was about to leave, the 5-color pen user intended to harm the 3 unconscious bodies, so Xiongxia turned back, but was beaten badly by him. He couldn't fight back, so the man thought he was pathetic for being deceived by one person after another. Jinxia couldn't act rashly and harm the 3 unconscious people, so he had to go with them to the 4 stone pillars. He then had to draw eyes on all 4 and successfully release the 4 dragons. They then created a formation and formed a gate. Jinxia stepped inside and arrived at a heavenly realm. The group outside thought he would surely die in there, and when that happened, they would just need to go in and take the pens, then deal with the 3 outside to take their pens as well. Meanwhile, Zhongxia was surrounded by the 4 dragons, but a high monk stepped out to welcome him in. He said he was both Huaisu, who created the pen tomb, and not Huaisu, just as Zhongxia was both Lai Bai and not Lai Bai. The reason he didn't consider himself Huaisu was that he was simply a soul residing in this place. He led Zhongxia inside and offered him a cup of water. When he drank it, all his wounds healed. Zhongxia knew the 2 outside had tricked him into coming here to deal with the 4 dragons for them. But these 4 dragons had long been guarding this place, and he was the only one allowed in by the monk and the 4 dragons. He wanted to ask the monk for a 3rd pen to deal with them and save the people. But the monk thought that even with 2 body pens, he wasn't stable, yet he was asking for a 3rd. However, Juanxia was willing to risk his life as long as he could save the 3 people outside. But the monk revealed that there were no spiritual pens here. He had been free all his life, and when he was about to die, the master of the pen tomb came to find him and force him to cultivate his spirit into a pen, but he refused and sent his soul here. Zhang Xiao realized this was just a place for the monk to rest peacefully, not a real pen tomb. He noticed that Lai Bai's poems were also rewritten here. If he could understand the poems, he would grasp the true power of Lai Bai's pen, so he asked Huaisu for help. Outside, the 5-color pen user was getting bored and wanted to have some fun with Shijiao, but he was kicked away by Yanqing. In fact, earlier, Zhang Xia had given Peter's rosary bead to Yanqing as a protective charm. He knew the difference between himself and his opponents, so he chose to give it to Yanqing because he had the ability to change the situation. He quickly healed the other 2 and bought time for Zhang Xia inside. Huaisu had a way to help him achieve the true power of Lai Bai's pen, which was to merge into Zhang Xia's body and pass on his knowledge. However, if he disappeared, this illusion would vanish along with a chance for Zhang Xia to safely return the pen. Right now, Zhang Xia had 2 paths, to fight against the two outside or to have a chance to safely free himself from the spiritual pen. But Zhang Xia was an adult, and adults don't choose, they take both. Outside, all three had split up to fight. Su Zhu dealt with Zhang He, Yan Qing fought Mr. Li, and the butler handled the five-color pen user. The butler had a clear advantage when he can find the five-color pen user to fight. However, Yan Qing was at a disadvantage against Mr. Li. He was forced to throw dirt in his face, but Mr. Li put on a ghost mask and rushed into attack. Yan Qing was hit on one arm and affected by ghost energy. When Mr. Li then aimed at the butler, Yan Qing stepped in to protect him. The group had to gather back together. But Zhang Xia had come out of the illusion. Mr. Li realized he had forgotten the relationship between Huaisu and Lai Bai, so he rushed to attack before Zhang Xia could make a move. However, Zhang Xia had already started reciting poetry and created a Lai Bai. Lai Bai brought the pen, and the three opponents were pushed back. Zhang He was controlled by Lai Bai and then fell unconscious. The other two attacked together, but Lai Bai drew a dragon that blocked all their moves and counterattacked. Zhang Xia then wrote a poem that surrounded both of them and struck in the middle. After his victory, Zhang Xia remembered his promise to Huaisu. Now he would need his knowledge to fight, and at some point, he would help Yan Qing increase his ability to reverse time and bring Huaisu back to help him return the pen. He saw that his friends were all safe. Yan Qing had just recovered one finger, so he used it immediately. Zhang Xia then interrogated Mr. Li about his master. He couldn't speak because he would die, but suddenly he started to show symptoms similar to the Wei family leader before his death. The five-color pen user took the opportunity to run away, while Mr. Li only managed to utter the name Ham Truong. Zhang Xia remembered hearing his Chinese teacher say this when visiting Zhang He in the hospital. He then suspected that everything had been set up by his teacher from the beginning, and telling him to find the pen was the first step of that plan. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to keep up to date with the next episode.